Whenever I bring up Dugtrio's presence in Gen 3 OU, it creates a little bit of confusion, because in most generations, Dugtrio is banned from competitive singles due to its controversial ability, Arena Trap. This ability prevents the enemy Pokemon from switching out, with the exception of flying types and Pokemon that have the ability Levitate. Trapping effects like this can create unhealthy gameplay in singles formats, allowing you to reliably eliminate certain enemy Pokemon to enable your teammates. Dugtrio was often used on stall teams to safely trap and take out specific threats, making a team's defensive core almost impenetrable. Arena Trap proved too game-breaking and centralizing in most generations, and had to be banned for the health of the game. So why then is Arena Trap perfectly legal in Gen 3? Why is Dugtrio allowed to roam free, trapping and eliminating Pokemon against their will, with no repercussions? Let's find out. But first, an intriguing announcement. If like me you tuned into the most recent Pokemon Presents, you'd be aware that all-new future form of Cobalion, Iron Brian, is currently making its way to the Paldea region. Iron Brian has been criticized for its underwhelming visual design that is lacking in important areas, such as neck length and hair formation that resembles a storm cloud. Despite these shortcomings, Iron Brian is by all accounts an altruistic and morally upstanding Pokemon that will likely help us in our fight against the controversial Iron Mugulus. Like this video and subscribe to the channel to ensure that Iron Brian arrives safely and quickly. Thank you. Although Arena Trap is now banned in generations 4 to 9, this wasn't always the case. The first time it was banned was in Generation 7. Dugtrio became more powerful than ever in Gen 7, due to it receiving a significant buff to attack. With its all-new 100 base attack stat and also the new ability to use Z-moves, it could now eliminate its targets much more effectively than ever before. With this ability to obliterate specific defensive walls and key threats, Dugtrio was an enabler for powerful stall teams that used Pokemon like Mega Sableye, Clefable, and Toxapex to wear down the enemy over time with residual damage and an unbreakable defensive core. Some players argued that Dugtrio itself was not the problem, but in fact Arena Trap is the problem. To prove this point, players used the same stall teams but switched out Dugtrio for Diglett. Diglett is objectively inferior to Dugtrio, but even this far weaker Trapper was able to do the job, and enable Stall well enough to be a massive problem. And that's why the ability Arena Trap was banned in Gen 7. After this happened, players of the older generations of competitive singles realized that even though Dugtrio is weaker in these games, surely it could still do the same thing. If Diglett could do it, Dugtrio can obviously do it, and they were right. In Gen 6, a slightly weaker Dugtrio could still enable a very similar style of stall team. In Gen 5 OU, Dugtrio's Sun team started to become a thing. These teams could safely eliminate Tyranitar to guarantee permanent Sun on the field, which gave Cresselia a Sun-boosted Moonlight, making it very difficult to beat. And even in Gen 4, Dugtrio started to be used on increasingly optimized teams to once again enable very stally strategies and safely eliminate anything that could stop them. So why is this not also happening in Gen 3? Why is Arena Trap an unhealthy enabler of these unbeatable teams in every generation except this one? Well, there's a few reasons. First of all, Dugtrio gained some options in Gen 4 onwards that allowed it to operate more effectively as a trapper. The introduction of Focus Sash allowed Dugtrio to live a hit from full health and attack an additional time, increasing damage output. Sucker Punch was also a new option for Dugtrio, a priority move allowing it to even get a second attack in against faster targets. In Gen 3, Focus Sash and Sucker Punch don't exist yet. Gen 3 also lacks the pivoting moves introduced in Gen 4. U-Turn and Volt Switch were very significant new additions to competitive singles that completely changed the game. The wide distribution of these moves was an indirect buff to trappers, allowing them even more opportunities to enter the field safely against targets they needed to trap. In Gen 3, the only pivoting move available in the game is Baton Pass, which is still a good move that's commonly used, but it isn't nearly as prevalent as U-Turn or Volt Switch are, and it also doesn't deal damage, meaning it's a bit more of a risk to use purely for pivoting. Another reason Dugtrio happens to be balanced in Gen 3 is that it can't quite do everything it needs to with one set. The most common nature to use on Dugtrio is a plus speed nature. Dugtrio can outrun a lot of important targets with this nature that are very important to be able to eliminate. Dugtrio can even outrun a Dragon Dance boosted Tyranitar when it has a Jolly nature, and KO them if they happen to be a purely offensive set without any HP or defense. But Jolly nature Dugtrio just misses the mark on a lot of important 1 or 2 hit KOs. The majority of popular Tyranitar sets invest in HP, and it doesn't take much to be able to live a Dugtrio Earthquake from full, and one-hit KO Dugtrio with a counterattack. Other common targets that get trapped and hit super effectively by Dugtrio, such as Metagross, Jirachi, and Celebi, very commonly invest in HP as well, and can live Dugtrio Earthquake easily and counterattack. Although this chip damage is good, losing a Pokemon and not even eliminating your target is a bad position to be in. Eliminating the targets you want to with Dugtrio in Gen 3 is harder. You need to chip them into range of your Earthquake, Hidden Power Bug, or Aerial Ace over the course of a game, and getting a safe entry point for Dugtrio to even be able to do this is not easy. Pivoting moves like Baton Pass on your team do make this easier, but fitting Baton Pass onto a Pokemon to allow that safe form of pivoting is a commitment. Celebi can learn Baton Pass, and it's a very good option in some cases, but it's also a move slot sacrifice that could be used on something powerful like Leech Seed, a stab move, a utility option like Heal Bell, etc. Baton Pass is not quite an auto-include like U-Turn and Volt Switch are from Gen 4 onwards. Getting Dugtrio onto the field is not easy. It requires an aggressive and dangerous prediction on your part. Dugtrio is frail, and switching it in is pretty unsafe, as it can be KO'd in one hit very easily. Sacrificing one of your other Pokemon is the safest way to get Dugtrio onto the field to trap something, which obviously has a very high opportunity cost associated with it. And once you do all this and successfully trap the target, although this will be really advantageous for you in the long run, it's a massive sacrifice in momentum in the short term. Choice Band is pretty much the only viable item on Dugtrio with the exception of occasional Salakberry set. If you're locked into Earthquake, there are so many ground immune Pokemon that can come in and take massive advantage of the free turn. Since Spikes are the only entry hazard available in Gen 3, and Stealth Rock doesn't exist yet, Pokemon with immunity to Spikes are some of the most powerful and commonly seen Pokemon in the format. The vast majority of competitive teams will be using multiple flying Pokemon as a form of relief against Spikes, and flying Pokemon are obviously also immune to ground type attacks. Skarmory is one of the best, most common Pokemon in Gen 3. Allowing Skarmory a free turn to switch in and create spikes on the field is a pretty massive momentum sink. The value generated by that single spike is going to punish you for the rest of the game. Even though you did just eliminate a Pokemon, sometimes the momentum loss is greater than the benefit of eliminating that target. Salamence or Gyarados can even come into a Choice Lock Dugtrio and get a free Dragon Dance, which can just end the game on the spot in the right situation. Zapdos can come in and get a free substitute, pass it to a teammate, and totally overwhelm you. There are so many examples of Pokemon that can take advantage of Dugtrio's Choice Locks. The metagame already skews towards flying Pokemon because of the prevalence of spikes, meaning that the majority of teams will be able to seriously punish Dugtrio. If you lock into a different move like Hidden Power Bug or Aerial Ace, you can even invite in an enemy Dugtrio who can live these moves and KO you with Earthquake. There's also Porygon 2, a Pokemon with the niche role of being able to counter-trap Dugtrio by tracing Arena Trap. Although Porygon 2 is not very commonly seen, the presence of this straight-up hard counter to Dugtrio is an important option to have in the metagame that will prevent Dugtrio from ever being too impossible to handle. In a similar way to in later gens, Dugtrio is used in Gen 3 on stally teams to eliminate wall breakers with the plan of bolstering your defensive core. It's quite a good option on teams like this. But since it's unable to safely enter the field and it needs proper setup to actually eliminate anything, Dugtrio feels a lot more manageable in Gen 3 than it does in later gens. The stall Pokemon that Dugtrio enables are also just not as powerful. Defensive mechanics get a lot better over time in Pokemon. Immediate healing moves like Recover and Soft Boiled aren't commonly distributed in Gen 3, and the Pokemon that do have them are restricted by Tyranitar's permanent Sandstorm denying them leftovers healing. Even if Dugtrio does eliminate a wall breaker like Heracross or Metagross, breaking through defensive cores in Gen 3 is not impossible. Defensive switches are predictable and telegraphed, making them dangerous. Spikes and Sand apply great pressure to defensive Pokemon, and mixed threats have the tools to break through common cores. Many defensive Pokemon rely on rest as a form of healing, which leaves them vulnerable for 2 turns and can be taken advantage of. Offensive teams not only have the means to threaten the defensive cores that are commonly used alongside Dugtrio, they can take advantage of the momentum loss from Dugtrio's Choice Locks to get their offensive game plans moving. Arena Trap being legal in Gen 3OU is one of the things that now makes it unique, and I believe the presence of Dugtrio is actually a good thing for metagame health. Dugtrio requires skill and understanding of the format to build with and to use properly. Trapping and eliminating an enemy should never be easy or automatic, and in Gen 3 it isn't. Not only do you need to very carefully think about how to get Dugtrio in safely, so it can do its job. If your enemy is smart, they can probably figure out that your team needs Dugtrio to answer certain threats and enable your teammates. They might guess that you're trying to chip things into Dugtrio range based on the way you're playing and how your team looks, and factor this into their decision making, predicting the moment when you go to Dugtrio and gaining an advantage because of it. Gen 3 Dugtrio is a great presence in the format that adds layers of nuance, mind games, and team building depth. Unlike in later gens, it's not an over-centralizing or dominant force that is difficult to answer and skews the metagame towards the same styles of teams. The metagame can handle Dugtrio in many different ways, and Dugtrio even serves to add options to your team building arsenal as an answer to threats like Tyranitar and Jirachi, or even a way to eliminate Blissey to enable special threats. What do you think of Dugtrio in Gen 3OU? Do you think Arena Trap is balanced? And what would you like me to talk about next? Let me know down below in the comments, and thank you for watching.
Thank you to the patrons. Become a patron to appear on this excellent end screen, alongside your favorite Pokemon.
The money got different, 'cause of what I'm spending. The money got different,
Oh, it's
'cause of what
Magneton!
I'm spending.
Oh,
The money
KO
got
by one
different,
hit! It
'cause
scattered
of what I'm
spikes!
spending. The money got different.